Well, I'm in the unspoiled village of Eals this afternoon just for a bit of an impromptu trip out to see if I can find the old Snope Burn Colliery that was situated down here. When I first moved up here in the 90s, Snope Burn drift was still open. It had 3 or 4 different periods when it worked in Snope Burn. It's only a little pit, but Lenny Boylan worked there during the Second War. Lenny was a bevin boy there. Sid Armstrong, his family had run it, and I think Sid had been a putter there. Sid said it were out but a nest of hitches. And when it did run, it didn't seem to run very long, and other people have gone back and had a go at it. Anyway, it's situated up near the bog farm on the road up to it. And another interesting feature, although the lighting's bad today, but as you're going down the main road through Town Green and you look across towards the bog, you can see a line of old drifts that go, whoa, they go all the way down the fell, and a beautiful old kiln on the side of the hill as well. Now, Sid told me that they were last worked in the 26th strike. Did he say it was the Snowballs? Can't remember now. I used to have a couple of pints with Sid in the Kirk style. I wish I'd recorded everything now, but there you go. But anyway, they probably dated long before that because they're on the first OS map as well. I don't know how far they went in, but they're next to each other. So they've only gone in a certain distance, so the water's getting them, and then they've come out and started again. So we'll have a wander up, see if we can find Snope Burn. So today's impromptu video brings us back to the North Pennines and the little village of Eals, which is on the River South Tyne, sort of between Alston and Haltwhistle. And we're going to go across. We start at Eals Bridge, which is a lovely bridge over the South Tyne. I'm going to follow this track down by the side of the river to Snope Burn Colliery. Now there's Snope Burn, and the pit itself is right at the bottom there, near a lovely little waterfall. It's only a really small pit, very insignificant. Then we're going to follow the lane and carry on up past the bog farm here, and then above the South Tyne, above Knarsdale, and follow this old bridle way along. And as you can see coming into sight now, we get a better view. Can we see all these old coal drifts? We're going to be following, well, we're not following them because it's all rewilded. We'll go and have a look at one, and then we're going to come across to a lovely lime kiln there. So these are things that probably wouldn't be investigated very much, but we're going to have a look today. Ordnance Survey map from 1865. They've got Eals Bridge and a cottage that's no longer there, Bridge End Cottage. This is the road we're going to follow, and you can see there's been activity there a long time ago. It shows this old level down by the outcrop here, and a lime kiln, and sadly I didn't get up to the lime kiln to have a look if it's still there. This is quite a nolly type of a hill. Now the pit itself, we go over the road bridge, over the footbridge there, and so you can see the waterfall. Well, the pit itself is just nestling down here, actually, down by that track. Now, if you look on the Brampton Geological Survey sheet, we're down in the village here, and this is the crop edge of the Little Limestone coal. Now, the Snope Burn drift is going in round about there. And you can see this fault here. Well, it's not quite accurate on this map just quite, because there's some drifts on the other side of this fault on the side of the road, but they're down here really. So that's where Snope Burn goes in. You can see the crop edge carries on and runs right across the side of the hill, and we're going to be investigating that. There it goes on past the bog farm, climbs up, pretty steep hillside this really. You got the River South Tyne at the bottom, and we're following this outcrop, and this is where all the little drifts are in. You can see one of them's actually marked there above Slaggyford, and there's a lime kiln just above Parson's Shield. So that's what we're going to be looking at. But I also do allude to other coal that have been worked in the area, and it's probably worth a bit of a video on its own. This is the area of Town Green, Knarsdale. This is actually where I used to live when I first moved up. But you can see the different outcrops of the Little Limestone coal. Now there's no records really of this, apart from on maps where it shows old workings. In particular this area, which is just behind, well actually you climb up the road and you drop over the railway bridge there, so it's this area. There's some workings, and it shows them on the map, we'll show you. There we are. You can see there's a little cabin there, and the remains of that cabin are actually still there, and it shows old coal workings all the way up the burn. So that's something interesting to look at again, and do a bit of a video on some of the kilns that's around the village. The coal continues up the clough, right up past the Merry now, and going up the old Ward Way, and right round then, and it goes into Slaggyford, and it's been worked at Slaggyford Fell End. So there's lots of coal workings around the area we know nothing about, but we're concentrating on this side today. Now, the Little Limestone coal is very variable. We've discussed this on various posts and other videos from time to time. And this is taken from Trotter and Hollingworth's work, and they've split it up into different zones, A, B, C, D. We're not going to go into it too much, but this is the area we're interested in, the Elston block. Well, it's not part of the Elston block, but I lump it in because it's the Elston coal. Zone D, 1 to 2 feet. And this is where the coal's more or less anthracite. Well, it's semi-anthracite. Now, the interesting thing that they do note, can you see this zone here, Zone C? This is where we've got the Gers and Tyne Monmouth. And in Zone C, well, the coal's already turning to anthracite, or it's losing its volatile content. This is the Great Stubblick Fault. It's a massive throw, and everything this side of the fault appears to be anthracite. They don't know why. They attribute some of the cinder coal that was found at Rochburn and the Howard to the Wind Dyke, a dyke of Winston running through the strata, but you can't attribute this. So this is your anthracite measures. There we've got Snope Burn, arrowed roughly there, and they're running across to behind town, well, in front of Town Green, sorry. We're going to be following that outcrop. Again, this is from Trotter and Hollingworth, and there's more than one coal in the Little Limestone strata, if you will, between the Little Limestone and the Great Limestone. They're not always present. There's 3 altogether, like I say, not always present. And this is where we're looking for here, Snope Burn. It shows 2 there, doesn't it? Into Tow's Bank. It must be the lower little limestone that they're working. Faff Clough, Barrow Colliery, and then the 2 coals are quite close together at Slaggyford Fell End, and there the coal right under the limestone is the dominant coal. And again, this is from Trotter and Hollingworth, and I thought I'd just show you this. The volatile matter, it's the amount of volatiles in the coal that dictate whether it turns into anthracite or not. And if we look, here's Snope Burn, and we've got 11.9 volatiles. And if we look all around the area of Elston there, Slaggyford, Barrow, they're all around from sort of 16 down to the 11. But it's interesting, if we go up, there we've got Gers, and the Long Dilly in Low Tyne Monmouth, that's part of the Gers really. But can you see? Only 16.6 volatiles there. That's equivalent to the Slaggyford coal, more or less. And if you look at the rest of the Naworth sort of area, Rochburn there 29, Byron 36, South Tyne in the 31s. So we see the big drop in volatiles there at the Gers, and certainly going up into the Geltsdale area there. So let's concentrate on Snope Burn. I don't have a great deal of information on it, sadly, because I didn't write things down when I used to talk to Sid. So we're coming down from the bridge, down this road here, and on the bank side I point to at least 3 old look like old entrances. I didn't know what they were at the time. One of them is on the old map, and it looks like the others were reopened during one of the periods of working. This fault, it isn't 100% true, but it's a rough area, and I say I missed the Limekiln. Now, this is the Snope Burn Colliery that we're kind of going to look at from the 1900s. That's the air drift. That's well and truly collapsed, and then there's a track down to where the main drift is, and the cabin down towards the waterfall. And where the cabin is, I do look at another drift where there's water coming out. It's actually a little water level, that. Now, the first proper records we've got, thanks to the Durham Mining Museum as well, were in the 1920s when these 2 drifts were put in. They weren't very extensive. The dip actually runs in that direction. It's between 1 in 9 and 1 in 12. And they put 2 roads in, drove a heading across and drove 6 or 7 boards off it. They didn't do a great deal. There was only 3 men employed. They'd have been using the hand pick. and the coal it's between 16 and 18 inch thick. And the manager was a bloke by the name of D. Parker, and it was closed March 1927. It was then worked again in between 1930 and 1932 by R. Todd and Son. Now, I'm sure I've come across the Todd before. Is it partly to do with some of the Featherstone pits? I'm not unsure. We're not really sure, but that really was the limit of their workings also, these boards that kind of come up, across there. So what the difference between their workings and the 1920 workings, we don't really know. So then we get into 1940s, where we do have a bit of anecdotal sort of history from Lenny Boylan and from Sid Armstrong. And then for a start in the 1940s, it was being run by Bell, Lowe and Robinson. Then later it was Hugh Lowe. I believe it was Hugh and Cliffy Lowe, according to Sid. And if you look in the National Records, the National Archives down at Kew, there are some records there of Hughie Lowe's from 1946 to 1951. So they worked a bit more considerably. They worked straightforward. Now then, sadly, their return drift hit a big washout, and the coal was washed out along here. So their main drift had to turn to avoid the washout till again it hit a washout. And at one time they only had a sort of 30-yard strip of coal to go at. And they carried on until 1949, was it? Anyway, they hit their washout in the June of 1946, thereabouts. And it looks as though it's them that have reopened these drifts here and worked a patch of coal up to the fault. They've hit the fault, not gone through it, and they've worked about 100 yard this side towards Bridge End Farm, and it looks like they've called it a day. But the main drift, they're in about 200 yards there, maybe just over 200 yard. So it's not a very extensive pit, and they haven't worked down to the dip really at all at this particular point. So that was abandoned in the late 1940s. They employed a few more workers, average sort of between 8 and 9, around about 7 underground. And like I said, Lenny Boylan was certainly working there in the early part of the Second World War. Now, talking to Sid said that they sold the pit for about £1,000. Now, that sounds a lot of money, and I can't remember when Sid's father sold it, which part of the partnership he was part of, but he did allude to there being a bridge across the burn to drifts on the other side. Now, there's no records in the Coal Authority about that, but it does look like there are drifts in at the other side of the burn. You can see under the limestone there. Now, the next owners were in the 1950s, and to be honest, by this time they must have really had compressed air underground if they hadn't had it underground before. The owners of this was T. Jackson, and they worked it up until 1959, and the manager was called T. Adderslade. Now, they tried to work to the dip. They put a heading in up here behind the waterfall and tried to work parallel really to the dip of the main drift up towards where the washout was. They had a couple of pumps underground as well. They had 280 gallon per minute pumps. But what closed that, I don't know. They closed in 1959. They didn't do a great deal of work, but they did some. And then, according to the Durham Mining Museum, in the 1960s, S. Russell and Co. run the pit, and I've no information at all about them. And then we're just going to carry on past the bog farm, and this is a first ordnance survey map, and you can see these workings have been worked in the 1860s, and it shows certainly at least 2 levels that are working at that time, and the old levels, and down to the Limekiln. And I think this is from the 1890s again, showing the pits, all workings. But there's the quarry. You can still see the quarry today, and there's the kiln. So we'll move on down, and like I say, I hope you enjoyed the video. I believe we go straight away. Obviously it's hauled out. Something's hauled out into here, look at that. Somebody's had a bit of pit muck out for the road at the bottom. There we go. If there's any sign of any coal in that bit of a clough. Well, we've got a coaly shale outcrop there. and a definite rabbit hole there. Sorry if I'm shaking, I haven't got my tripod. Nice view of the angle of the dip on that actually and all. There we are, there's the crop edge. There's that other hole in there. That nice little knoll. Oh, just down the road from the bridge off the South Tyne there. Obvious, they've been in here at regular intervals. There you go, there again. Here we are. And that's just where I've been for a walk up, so they've been nibbling at the crop edge along here. It's all overgrown now. This is certainly one of the drifts here. That's well and truly gone and fell in quite a landslip there. We'll follow this track down by the river. There's an old building. Top of the limestone and all here. Well, that's one of the drifts all walled up. Limestoned up. I never remembered it. I think that's maybe Kevin Shepherd's handiwork. He was going round boarding them up. That's Snope Burn main drift there, and here's the little cabin, so this is the pit top area. And like many of the pits up here, it's in a real idyllic setting. There's a road going up out of it. And we've got the little waterfall just through those trees there. There's a lovely picture window there in the back of the cabin, but what I've noticed, it looks like there's been a doorway there for sure, and I wonder if there's been a drift here as well, because there's plenty of water coming out, so has this been like a travelling road airway? Main pit tops there. There's obviously the men's cabin, I would think. I don't know if they had compressed area or not. I never asked Sid. Mind you, I suppose the waterfall could be slightly less idyllic if you've been letting water all day. It's a gorgeous spot. So don't you kind of wish you'd ask people a bit more when they're around? Like Lenny Boylan had worked here as a Bevan boy, and Lenny basically had gone to Wallsend Rising Sun to do his training, and then he'd gone to Clargle when Wrights had it, and they'd fallen out about something. I can't remember exactly what it was about, whether he worked on the surface or underground, but anyway, he ended up leaving there and coming here to Snope Burn, and he used to walk from Ulston, he reckoned. I think he used to fill about 3 tubs a day here, I don't know. Anyway, that was Lenny's time here, and then obviously Sid had been here with his family. Sid had been a putter, Sid Armstrong, and Sid and his dad, they'd been across at the Craig Drift there on Tyndall Bank. They'd been involved in that, and you just kind of wish you'd asked a little bit more when they were here. But there you go, you live and learn, don't you? Just see it there, but I've never noticed before, not that I've looked before, how Knarsdale Hall is built on that mound. I'm sorry I'm shaking a bit. Knarsdale Hall goes back an awful long way, and we're looking down the beautiful South Tyne Valley, and if we went across that hill there that's just coming into the left, in the distance we'd get back across to Croglin. We're on this bridleway now, heading towards where there's a Limekiln and some of the old drifts. We're starting to come into some of the drifts now. You can see this one here. and road leading into this one. Little bit of a pit top area here, another drift there, looking down on the South Tyne. And that area is called Town Green. And just behind there, where the railway bridge is, again some old workings shown on the 1865 map and remains of a cabin. Where I used to live when I first moved up here. I used to look across at this and never been up yet. As well wander further up anyway. There's a definite track there where they've took the coal back out. There's plenty of limestone up here, and we're looking down the South Tyne Valley towards Altwhistle. The woods in the far distance is Tow's Bank Wood, and that's where the last sort of anthracite pit on Alston, well, if you can call it Alston Moor, still was. The big fault, the Stubblick Dyke, comes across there. Where I'm right in the background there. The Stubblick Dyke comes across there, and the true coals come up then, a massive fault. I think it's about 1600 foot of a fault. These are what remains of these drifts along here. They're all, I say they're all same, see one, see them all. Not necessarily the case. Could be one open. But as you can see, they're all kind of rewilding up here now. There's a definite track leads back down to the bridleway there. Well, I say Sid said these were nibbled at in the 26th strike, but they're on the first OS map as well. And there's something up there as well. Well, there's a long line of the drifts all across the hill, but as I say, it's all kind of getting rewilded now, so you can't get to all of them. But the kiln that served them is behind us, and it's really well restored. So if we look on the first OS map later on, we'll pick these up, and some of them are labelled as working. So there's been quite a lot of industry up here, very small scale obviously, but across the road, as I said, we've got Town Green, Knarsdale, and on the 1841 census there's quite a lot of pitmen living in the village, and the manager, it's one's down as colliery manager, but he's actually working at Hartley Burn Colliery, you know, towards Lamley, just beyond Lamley, Lord Carlisle's Hartley Burn, then, well, Thompson's, wasn't it? And he was living in what was known as the schoolhouse there. So I wonder if the other pitmen were also living across there, sorry, working across at Hartley Burn. I don't know. Somebody must have worked in these, and somebody must have worked in those going up the Nar Burn as well. It's interesting as well, because it's when the railway's coming through the Alston branch, and there's quite a big shanty town at Knarsdale there for the navvies that was working on the railway, and one or two of them were, well, they were living in Eals as well. Anyway, let's have a scan at the kiln. Well, it's the first time I've walked across to it, and it's a lovely kiln. It's got that sort of Aztec temple sort of look to it on it, and the obligatory tree growing out the top. And the track goes back there up towards the pits, and ultimately back to the bog and Eals village, and behind me we go back down towards the village of Slaggyford. Kind of got everything all in one here. There's your kiln, road leading away, and behind is the limestone quarry. And we've got the nice track leading up to the line of coal drifts up there. And as Lenny Boylan used to say, where there's a kiln, there'll be a pit and a quarry. And Lenny, you weren't wrong. This is the quarry. So here we've got the backbone of the Alston Crow coal trade, really, the lime burning industry, and crow coal being I think a rather derogatory term. It obviously formed quite, well, an important integral part of the community, and was one of those base industries that without it being here, other things wouldn't work proper, a bit like an application that runs in the background. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this bit of an impromptu out and about video, as Chris would say. A quiet look at Snope Burn Colliery, and then some of the drifts along the side of the fell here, above Town Green, Knarsdale and down into Slaggerford. So thanks for watching, we'll catch you next time. Go on Morgan.